Objectives. At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to first, understand the concept of dissimilar fraction and how to visualize them. Second, identify dissimilar fractions using visual models like number lines, fraction bars, or pie charts. Third, recognize that dissimilar fractions have different denominators and learn how to express them in a common denominator for comparison. And lastly, arrange numbers to visually identify common multiples and determine the LCM.
Hi everyone! How are you today? That's good to hear! I hope you're all ready to learn about fractions today. Are we excited? But before we proceed to our next discussion, let me check your attendance first.
Now children, before we proceed to our next topic, let's review first on our previous topic, parts of a fraction. Let's answer these questions. What does 1 mean in 1/2? What does 1 mean in 1/3? What does 2 mean in 2/4? What does 3 mean in 3/8? And what do we call these numbers written above the fraction bar? If your answer is numerator, then you are right. Next, what does 2 mean in 1/2? What does 3 mean in 1/3? What does 8 mean in 3/8? What do we call these numbers written below the fraction bar? If your answer is denominator, then you are right. Next, let's recall the concept of similar fractions. Let's answer the following exercises. In 2/5, 3/5, and 4/5, what will be the next? Yes, that's right. It's 5/5. How about in 3/8, 4/8, black, and 6/8? What is the missing part? That's right. It's 5/8. How about in 1/7, black, 3/7, and 4/7? What is the missing part? That's right, it's 2/7.
So now let's move on to the group activity. The class will be divided into 3 groups. Group 1 will be rectangle group, Group 2 will be circle group, and Group 3 will be square group. I will give each group 3 pieces of cutouts of the shape and the group will be named after. Each group will get a shape and fold it into 3 equal parts. You need to darken the creases. The rectangle group will shade 1 part, the circle group will shade 2 parts, and the square group will shade 3 parts. Now, get another shape and fold it into 4 equal parts, and then darken the creases again. The rectangle group will shade 1 part, the circle group will shade 2 parts, and the square group will shade 3 parts. For the last step, get the last shape. Fold it into 8 equal parts, darken the creases, let the rectangle group shade only 1 part, the circle group 3 parts, and the square group is 5 parts.
Good morning everyone! Today, we're going to talk about fractions. Who can tell me what fraction is? Correct! Now, let's look at these fractions. If I write 1/2, 1/3, and 3/4 on the board, what do you notice about them? Yes, the top number is called the numerator and the bottom number is called the denominator. The denominator tells us how many parts a whole is divided into. Now, look at these fractions again. Do they have the same denominator? Exactly. These fractions are called dissimilar fractions because they have different denominators. Now, think about this. Does the denominator affect the size of each part? That's right. If I cut a cake into 2 pieces, each piece is much bigger than if I cut it into 10 pieces. So, the larger the denominator, the smaller each part is.
Now, let's use fraction bar to compare fractions. Here's a bar for 1/2 and here's one for 1/3. What do you notice? Right! Even though both fractions have 1 as the numerator, the denominator determines the size of each part. So, which fraction is larger? Exactly! The smaller the denominator, the bigger the parts.
Now that you know how to visualize with fraction bars, let's begin visualizing dissimilar fractions by comparing them in a number line. Now, who can tell me what a number line is? Correct! Remember to always divide the number line into equal parts and count up the correct number of parts to find your fraction. This is a representation of a whole divided into equal parts. This is an example of a number line. How about the first step in comparing dissimilar fractions? Excellent! Through getting the least common multiple, we are now able to convert the fraction in order to have the same denominator. Exactly! In comparing dissimilar fractions, we must first have a least common denominator that will allow us to accurately compare and add these values. Can anyone tell me why a number line needs a common denominator? Very good! Now let's try to plot our fraction on a number line. For example, we have 1/3. To do this, we need to divide the space between 0 to 1 into 3 equal parts. Can anyone help me do that? Great job! Now that we have 3 equal parts, let's find the 1/3 mark. Where do you think 1/3 should be? Very good! How about 2/3? Where should this be marked? Correct! Now let's discuss how to find a common denominator. When we are working with dissimilar fractions, we need to find a common denominator. Who can tell me why we need to find a common denominator? Very good! When we are working with fractions, we need a common denominator so we can compare and combine them. Can anyone show me an example of 2 fractions that have different denominators? Nice one! Next, we need to find a number that can divide both denominators evenly. Can anyone think of a number that can both divide 4 and 6 together? Excellent!
Now that you have learned all about visualizing dissimilar fractions, let's have a little activity to test your knowledge. Group yourselves into 3 so we can start. I will hand out a set of fractions for you to compare. I want you to use the fraction bars and number lines to tell me which fraction is the largest. There, you have the values of 1/2, 1/3, and 1/4. Can anyone tell me what's the common denominator is? That's right. Can you explain how you got 12? Very good. Now that you have found the common denominator, which group can tell me what's the largest fraction? Correct! Now, if any of you have questions regarding our topic, feel free to raise your hand and I will come to your group table.
Let's review what we have discussed. What are dissimilar fractions again? Correct! How about on the number line? What are the things we need to consider? Nice one! Next, why does finding a common denominator helps in comparing fractions? Very good! Can someone share what they have learned today? As for your exit assessment, compare 3/8 and 2/5 and determine which one is larger. Great job, everyone! We're already done with fractions. Remember to always practice solving and apply all of the things we have discussed. This will help you to have a strong foundation for future math lessons. where you will encounter more complex concepts. That concludes our discussion.
Let's have a few recap. First, when do we say fractions are dissimilar? Dissimilar fractions have different denominators, which makes them difficult to compare directly. Using fraction bars, number lines, and finding a common denominator helps us determine which fraction is larger or smaller. Understanding these methods allows us to compare fractions accurately in different situations. Fractions are dissimilar if they have different denominators. Second, how can this topic, visualizing dissimilar fractions, be applied in the daily life of the learners? Visualizing dissimilar fractions helps learners in daily life by improving their understanding of comparisons and proportions. For example, it aids in sharing food, comparing discounts, or adjusting recipe measurements. These skills makes math more practical and useful in everyday situations.
Today, we're going to do a fun fraction quiz to see how much you've learned about fractions. There are two parts to this quiz, Test 1 and Test 2. Now, Test 1 is all about looking at pictures and figuring out what fraction the shaded part shows. For each question, look closely at the shaded area and choose the correct fraction from the choices given. Remember, a fraction shows how many parts are shaded out of the total parts. Test 2 is about comparing fractions. You'll see two fractions in each question. If they are the same or similar, put an O. If they are different or dissimilar, put an X. Take your time and check both the top number or the numerator and the bottom number or the denominator. Do your best and check your answers when you're finished. After we complete the quiz, we'll go over the answers together to see how you did. Alright, let's get started with Test 1. Good luck and have fun!
Now children, before we end our discussion, this will be your assignment for our next meeting. Direction. Illustrate the pair of fractions. Then write dissimilar if the set is dissimilar fractions and similar if these are not dissimilar. That's all. I hope you are clear about our topic for today. Good job everyone and see you on our next meeting. Bye!